We should be live. Hey Daniel, how are you doing?
Hey man, how's it going? Pretty good, and you?
Good. I'm just gonna double check on the phone to make sure that we are effectively have music. Yeah, we have music. That's good. And do we have voice? Yeah, my voice. Checking Daniel's voice.
Check, 1, 2.
Yeah, no. This takes like a couple of seconds before it comes in the live, so not gonna wait for it. But no, it sounded good. All should be fine. So sorry about that. Oops, and we are on the wrong slide. Bunch of amateurs. You would think after 29 episodes we got this figured out, but we don't. Things are
It
always
takes
changing.
it takes a cool 30 to really kind of hit your stride. So
Yeah, man. Well, it's always problems with audio and connecting to Zoom meetings and always changes and updates, Zoom updates who crash. Yeah, not fun
there's
anymore.
always something.
So with that said, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. If you're joining us live, if you're joining us on demand, thank you for watching. I think that we will have an interesting episode. We skipped 1 month in February. Not because we were not here, we were here. But, yeah, just no time to have a live session, and also very short after the January session. But now we have a lot of content to catch up, so we should be good. As always, you can find us on different platforms. So of course here on YouTube, you can find us under the streams. All the live streams are there on demand, of course, so you can watch live. If you're watching live, you can interact with us. So we have a chat. So if you type something in the chat, if you have a question, we will try to respond to that. If you're watching on demand, of course, the live will not work. So no questions. But you can always reach us through Twitter at Radware Research, or you use Telegram, like every respectable activist would do. You can join us in the Radware Research chat.
As of
Every
last year, right?
yeah, every month there's a newsletter going out from the Threat Researchers Live, a summary of the most important things that we saw in the threat landscape, our point of view, because I know there's many newsletters out there, but each have their own point of view on the threat landscape. So we have a very specific view from our position, but other people have a broader view and might cover more items. And then the GitHub is where we put all the links. So the links for this episode, we cannot put them in the comments anymore because there's just too many. So you will find them typically on GitHub, which I still need to post for this episode. So don't go look yet. It's not there yet. The usual disclaimer and the content. So we're gonna talk, yeah, as usual, I would say, activist campaigns in the Russian-Ukrainian war. That's like our monthly dose of drama. Um,
I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon either.
oh yeah, it's gonna stay on for a while, and it's
Yeah.
actually ramping up. The activity is ramping up, but now we're broadening our view to more activists. So you will see that we will start with a Russo-Ukrainian conflict activist. So somebody who's doing it for other purposes or other motivations. Splinternet, very current because of the whole conflict got accelerated, same as the deglobalization. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in different parts of the presentation. Speak about threat alerts that we did recently, some notable bots and botnets that were covered. When I say notable, it means that they came up in the press. I don't mean that they're dangerous or anything. When we will come back to that later.
What grinds
Breaches,
Pascal's gears?
yeah, yeah, grind my gears. Yeah, there's a rant coming up, so yeah. I feel it.
It's embedded in the presentation.
Yeah. Ending with the fun stuff, the breaches, the swatting, raids, and arrests. Daniel's favorite topics, I would say.
Crisis and escalation.
Yeah. Oh, Daniel, I'm gonna give you control, so that will
Every time you give me control, you regret it.
give mouse keyboard control to Daniel. Here you go. Don't do it yet. First off, hacktivists, and this time not related to the war, but a religious motivation. So this weekend we saw a good number of denial of service attacks targeting Australia. And the operation that we discovered was called Op Australia. And there was also a mention of Opsientic. Don't know where the Yentic comes from.
Obsgentic.
Yeah. So I have no idea where the Opsientic comes from, but most of the threat actors agreed on calling it Op Australia, and that's pretty much what happened. Is that the week before, so on March 11th, during the final show of the Melbourne Fashion Festival, a fashion label with the name Not a Man's Dream caused a big shockwave across the Muslim community by featuring a model that was wrapped in transparent material with the word Allah written in Arabic on it. Actually, it said Allah walks with me across the whole body of the model. So, and somebody, a Muslim that was in the audience, was actually shocked by this and made a video, posted it on TikTok, and that TikTok video went viral. So, the whole Muslim community was not happy about that display of not a man's dream. Um, it's kind of a strange name to have not a man's dream and then have women's clothing, because
Yeah,
I
and
don't know.
also just to jump in there, this wasn't like really the first operation that we've seen the last few months around an insult towards Allah and a specific
Oh yeah,
religion.
no,
There's in January we covered the event of, I forget the guy's name, but he was burning Qurans across
yeah.
I think it was like Sweden, was it?
Yeah,
In
it
Denmark.
yeah, it will come back with Anonymous Sudan.
Yeah.
And then before that, we had the incident where in India, where the Prophet Muhammad
Yep.
was
Yeah.
used in a campaign. And then before that, you had Charlie Hebdo, who had cartoons with the Prophet Muhammad. So yeah, there has been a couple of recurring themes on Muslim um, bad Muslim propaganda, I would say, or images against Muslim. So not surprised to see that they came out and started attacking. So there were a couple of groups involved. The major ones, the first ones that triggered it was Team Insane from Pakistan, and then Eagle Cyber was also there. Those are the ones who refer to it as Op Yentic. And Mysterious Team, who is referring to it as Op Australia. So Mysterious Team is from Bangladesh. So those are three groups of Muslims who were pulling together with a whole other number of smaller groups that were on Telegram. And they were communicating on Telegram, so we saw how fast they were able to spread that message and get it going. As of Friday, March 17th, so a couple of days after the incident, but that was only a couple of hours after the first message came on those forums about this incident. It was said that yeah, sorry. So as of so Friday, March 17th, Not a Man's Dream got attacked. So they became a target for all those Muslim activists, and the attack started on Not a Man's Dream and continued until after the weekend. Now, in the weekend itself, a whole lot of denial of service and website defacement started happening in Australia on Saturday. And by Monday, we saw that more than 70 different Australian websites, including public websites of government, sports, banks, education, and also private businesses, have all been the target of denial of service attacks and also about alleged breaches. So, rounding up what happened there, and also giving some advice to be prepared. Now, we don't want to make. There's no reason to have any panic going around, but you can see how fast these people are coming together now, especially with their Telegram groups now. Before they had those private forums, and yeah, they had a lot of communication with their own members, but there wasn't a lot of communication between the different members that were not on the same private forums. Now you see that through Telegram, they easily can forward a message to a like-minded group and get them onto the same case and get them participating in those different attacks. So Telegram actually made them move much faster and made them much more connected compared to the way they were working before. Now these attacks were clearly motivated by religion, which is different from the pro-Russian hacktivists, which are attacks that are motivated by politics. These were motivated by religion. So, and the objective is still the same, pretty much as with the Russian pro-Russian hacktivists. It's about defacing public websites and making websites unavailable. So, actually, bringing the attention to their message and showing their message to the world. Um, we all know that DDoS attacks are not the hardest to pull off. If there's one attack that you can do in a hit and run, it's a DDoS attack. There's no need to breach a website. There's no need to leave an IP address. You can do everything remotely. And since the start of the invasion of Russia in Ukraine, we have seen IT Army publish a lot of tutorials and polishing a lot of older tools and updating and improving tools and making DDoS much more accessible to anyone, because they were asking a volunteer army across the West to help Ukraine to attack Russian targets to stop the propaganda in Russia. And for this, they created tools and they provided people with tutorials on how to set up those tools, how to use those tools. So that actually democratized DDoS and make it much more accessible to anyone as it was before the invasion. So, and the fallout that we see here in Australia also demonstrates again how any organization can become a target of hacktivists. Most of the organization and education and government that were in the ports of Australia, they have nothing to do with Not a Man's Dream. They have nothing to do with that fashion. They never said anything wrong about Allah or anything wrong against Muslim, but they became a target. So that
And just to
fashion
jump in
label,
there,
yeah,
that's something that we saw a lot with the Op SeaWorld, Op Killing
hmm,
Bay, a
yeah,
lot of the old anonymous operations where they didn't target people directly; they target indirect people, people to deal with shipping,
yeah,
logistics, tourism. They hit anybody and anything to get attention, right?
yeah, exactly. So, but with that, we want to make sure that people understand there's no reason to panic, but organizations need to be prepared, because even if it's not that impacting for your website, it still gets the attention. Like the attacks in France now, there's a prosecution going on, so there's investigations going on. Even though that the airports that were attacked in France recently, their operations were not impacted. It was only the public website. But at the same time, it can cause chaos from the people. People want to see information about the airport and cannot access the website. Media are publishing, oh, all those websites went down. We were under attack. Luckily, we know most of the time by who, because hacktivists are claiming the attacks. So as long as they are claimed, at least we know from which angle they come, and there's no reason to panic. If a big attack would happen, nobody claims it, then we have a big question. Is it a nation state that's starting to attack that country? Will there be a much bigger fallout? Do we have to be scared about other kinds of attacks on critical infrastructure or more impacting attacks? In terms of a hacktivist, we know that they are there to cause chaos and to make themselves heard. They want to make sure that their message is heard, and they don't want anyone to abuse the name Allah, especially not in scarcely clothed models.
Yeah.
So with that, so and that also ties into my message about hacktivist DDoS are only a nuisance, which is true. When you're a target, okay, it comes around your website, and in some cases the attacks were only 5 minutes. Now in other cases, attacks can last a whole day. Um, but there's no I still have to come across an attack that was not able to be blocked by using adequate DDoS protection. So if you have DDoS protection, it will be stopped. However, I can understand that organizations say for certain of our websites, those are not critical parts of our business. We will not protect them. Now, by not protecting them, you are actually helping those hacktivists make their objectives. Activists are looking for targets that are unprotected. So what we saw is we had several targets that were customers, and we see the attacks coming in. They're testing for 3 minutes, and then they go away. They come back with another attack vector, and they're like trying to poke around and see if something sticks. If they see that the website is not able to bring the website down, they just go away. They move on and they try to find another target. Now, if they cannot bring a website down, they can also not cause chaos and they cannot spread their message. So automatically the problem will disappear if everyone will be protected. However, if you're not protected, well, then, especially when the media also talks about it, that's exactly what they want. They want the media attention. You see them bragging on their forums, on their Telegram forums. After a successful attack, first of all, they post a link to demonstrate the attack. So they actually inform us, we have done that attack. We have attacked that organization or that government. And then when it comes in the press, you see that immediately they take screenshots of the press and put it on their forum, show it to their members and boast about it. And that also increases their membership, increases their influence. That's what we see with Killnet. Killnet is very media savvy. So he built a reputation in Russia, was on different interviews. He's the glue now between all the different pro-Russian hacktivists that are in the same Killnet cluster. And that's growing. Their participation is growing, and also their impact will be growing. And if it continues to grow, at some point it might get worse. Especially now Killnet is starting to pivot and wants to go move away from DDoS and wants to make a cyber Wagner army. So much like Russia is using the private military organization Wagner to do their fighting, he wants to build a Wagner-like, which is a very aggressive kind of army, a Wagner-like army for cyber. That's his next mission. So he became so influential that now he's trying to bring different people together and build a special army to perform more impacting attacks on Western targets. So not just DDoS anymore, but things that really can impact infrastructure, data breaches that they can leak information, and intelligence and information campaigns.
Yeah, and back to what you said as far as like Killnet, Kill Milk looking to make their own private military contracting unit, even if they fail, this could just be such an idea where the Russian government steps in and starts sending them
Yeah.
Wagner PMC members to do hacking for them. So, looking forward, it's yeah, DDoS is a nuisance, but it's a nuisance that we all have to deal with. Even if it's a successfully mitigated attack, someone's got to look into it, write a report, look into it after action.
Well, it's a dream scenario for the government, right? Because you have that independent faction that they don't have to control or pay, that have aligned objectives, and they're causing chaos in the Western world without the Western world even being able to point a finger to the Russian government because they're not involved. It's they're operating by themselves. So now there are some rumors that some of them are controlled. Maybe they are controlled, but certainly not sponsored because they're always trying to find new ways to monetize. We discussed about that, the rings, the singers, the Infinity Forum that Killnet created with an underground market attached to it. So we see them always trying to find money and trying to get donations coming in and advertisements on Telegram. But as their membership grows and more members on Telegram, more advertisement revenue they make. And we all know that you can become very rich from advertisement alone if you look at Google and Facebook. Now that is happening with hacktivists. So one day accidents might happen if this continues. Yeah. Now, moving to another part of the world, but still a hacktivist and still a motivation in the religion space and also Muslim. So, Anonymous Sudan has been attacking Sweden somewhere beginning of February and mid-February. So Swedish government, hospitals, transport, postal service, finance, education, a lot of different verticals were attacked by and targeted by anonymous. And they claimed responsibility for more serious attacks on Scandinavian airlines. They said that they found access to customer data and that they would expose that data, but they even put it up for sale on their website. Um, we cannot verify that information, but I would be very surprised if that was an actual breach. That's a typical tactic that we've also seen from Killnet in the past. First, they will do some DDoS attacks. They get media attention. Once they get that media attention, then they will say that they did a more serious attack and have access to sensitive data and are going to leak that data and hurt a specific company that is typically too big for them to attack. So that's psychological warfare that they're doing. They know that this target, they cannot attack that target under normal conditions, but after having the media attention and all the chaos caused the day before, they will leverage that momentum and then they will post a message, and then people don't know what's going on. So there's a lot of doubt. Is it true? Is it not true? It's always harder to prove that something is not true than to find out that something was true. So how do you prove it? There's always a possibility that it had happened. So for those companies that get that kind of information out there, they have to go on the back feed and they have to go say that no, we are sure that there was no intrusion. But how can you be sure? As we already know, there can be a backdoor that was sitting in the company for a long time. We have seen so many breaches and leaked credentials through ransomware attacks. How can you be 100% sure that you were not breached? It's nearly impossible. So that puts companies in a very difficult situation when activists do that.
A lot of verification that has to go on there.
Yeah, yeah, and he also claimed the Swedish central bank that he attacked them. Now the Register took this up with the Russian, well, the Register as usual. They have always the greatest and the most.
They have the best headlines. They really do.
Yeah, the best headlines ever. So
they say
Russian
what you can't say, type of thing.
Yeah. Russian hacktivists DDoS hospitals with pathetic results. And with pathetic results, what they mean is that, yeah, the websites were impacted and the websites were down, but the operations of the hospital were not impacted. So medical care was still ongoing. All the systems were working in the hospital. There was no disruption at all in the hospital itself. It was only the public website. However, it was enough for the central for some central instances to come together. And like in Denmark, the Copenhagen Health Authority, so while Anonymous Sudan in the second half of February and early March was attacking hospitals in Denmark, they created a separate website where they consolidated all the contact information and all the doctor information for all the different websites for the 9 different Danish hospitals that were under attack, just to make sure that that information stayed available to people. Because as you know, we don't have phone books anymore. I used to remember when I was little, every year we got like this big phone books where you have all the information that you can look up. But nowadays, that information is on the internet. Best case, it's stored in your phone, but yeah, I don't have all the phone numbers of all the hospitals in my phone just in case the internet gets broken by a hacker. So
yeah, I gotta Google 911 if anything bad happens. So.
yeah, well, yeah, it's not 911 here. I have to look it up every time. I think it's 112 that we have to call. But yeah, I have to Google it every time. What's the emergency number in Belgium? So if ChatGPT or Bing goes down, I'm done, man.
Game over.
Now these attacks from Anonymous Sudan were due to Quran burning. So that was an incident that happened earlier in Stockholm, where the Quran was burned by Rasmus Paludan, which is apparently a far right politician with a dual.
He is very far right politician. There's no apparently about that one. In fact, I think he actually just like a few days ago he was banned from ever entering the United Kingdom going forward because he's
Yeah,
so
he was going to do
confrontational.
something over there, right? He was gonna burn the
Yeah,
Quran
yeah.
in the UK, right? Yeah, that's what he
Hey, at least some
announced.
companies are smarting up. They know if
Yeah.
he comes in there and he burns the Quran, they're going to be DDoS. So just keep him out of the country.
Well, yeah, he has dual nationality, so he can go in Denmark and Sweden without
Uh,
that.
yeah, I was going to say I think it was a hacking team was the last wave of hackers that were targeting this guy because he's burning Qurans. Now non Sudan has picked up the lightning rod and ran with it.
Yeah, but it's again they're attacking the country. They're attacking the hospitals, medical
Mhm.
care. They're attacking governments. They're attacking transportation. They're attacking all kinds of different services of the country because this one guy that burned the book. It's not about the country. The country was as shocked as the Muslims. I would almost say. But if you
Yeah.
look at Denmark, first it was the Danish education sector that was under attack. Then they went after the airports in Denmark. Then they went after the railway system. Then they went after the hospitals. And every day there was a new attack going on, and new DDoS attacks. But again, never was any of the operations were impacted of those organizations. It was always the public websites. As we said, the objectives of those activists is to be heard. So they're not gonna go penetrate silently into a company and sit there or encrypt the data and try to get money out. No, that's not their objective. Their objective to get their message out. So they're gonna go after the most public assets that you have, which is your public website, which can impact your reputation. Another reason to
Going back to that last slide, I have to ask
yeah.
though, like, what movie is this from, or is it created by AI?
I
It's things
no,
nowadays are so.
I think that the one on Danish education sector that's St. Elmo's Fire. Could that be the movie?
I don't know, but that character, the 2 inches right above my head. I just I like the image, and I have to ask myself, is that AI created, or is that a movie I haven't seen before?
This one, June.
Hmm.
No, I don't know.
That was that.
No, but I think that this burning school that could be St. Elmo's Fire, um, an old movie, classic, worth watching. And the other one must also be a movie about a plane. I do remember seeing that image as well. I don't think it's created
Okay.
with AI, as opposed to many of the images you will see in the upcoming slides, because we have been
Yeah,
playing with AI
that's why I
image
have to ask
generation.
now. It's like every time you see an image, you have to ask, is that real or is that AI created?
Yeah. So now, during the attacks on Denmark and Sweden, the objective, or better, the targets, um, not the motivation, but the objective of Anonymous Sudan was aligning well with the pro-Russian activists like Killnet, because Killnet wants to attack Sweden and Denmark, and did attack Sweden. Killnet, not only also No Name and other pro-Russian activists, have attacked Sweden and Denmark in the past because they want to join NATO. So if you look at the objectives, both of them are aligned. So Anonymous Sudan, Killnet, they both attack the same countries, and they're happy to jump on board and help each other to perform those attacks. However, the motivations are different. Anonymous Sudan is religion. It's about burning the Quran. Killnet is politics. It's about Sweden joining NATO and typically other countries providing support for Ukraine. But at the same time, Killnet did announce, and that's also to stir up the community and to build a bigger circle of influence again. But he announced at some point that Anonymous Sudan was considered an official member of Killnet, which also angered the Western factions of Anonymous. So the mainstream and Western Anonymous group denied that Anonymous Sudan was part of Anonymous. They don't want to have anything to do with Anonymous Sudan. And actually the same with Anonymous Russia. They also deny Anonymous Russia for good reason. And even there was a war, we talked about this, Anonymous Italy declaring the war against Anonymous Russia at some point. So Anonymous is one of those monikers that's being used by lone wolves and different hacker groups that want to get some attention. Now there's a
This is also
West. Yeah, go
As I
ahead.
say, this is also the issue inside of Anonymous is that it's our way or no way. And then,
Yeah,
you look at them and you're supposed to be an anti-status group, but all of a sudden they have political affiliation. We don't like you because you support this government. Well, what government do you support, Mr. Anonymous? It becomes
yeah,
very strange, right? Like this is
yeah,
kind of like what
exactly.
led to their downfall in 2016 is when, half the group was supporting Hillary Clinton, the other half was supporting Donald Trump. And
Yeah,
completely downfall from the group because they chose to support politicians, right? They're supposed to be the
yeah,
anti-politician, but
yeah.
I digress here.
Two trends: splintering and deglobalization. So
Mm-hmm.
it's also happening to the hacktivist groups.
It's happening everywhere. It's kind of scary.
Now, recently, so this weekend, Anonymous Sudan, this weekend, and also yesterday and day before, Anonymous Sudan was targeting France. And again, this time, and even during an interview with the French reporter, Anonymous Sudan, because they're open for interview. So I had already a Swedish reporter, no, a Norwegian reporter, or Danish, no, Danish reporter, sorry, with those Nordic countries. A Danish reporter that I talked to who had an interview with Anonymous Sudan, and now there's also a French reporter that had an interview with Anonymous Sudan. And he asked him straight out, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "Yeah, because of caricatures that Charlie Hebdo did in 2015, which is rather old, but yeah, still ties into the same religion motive that he used when he was attacking Sweden and Denmark." And the reporter also asks, "What do you think about France helping Ukraine and giving support to Ukraine?" And he said, "Yeah, I don't give a shit about all that." Um, Now that said, if Russian activists are attacking the same targets, or Russian attackers ask my help, I will always be ready to jump in because they helped me in the past with other targets. So because of their aligned objectives, they found each other, they helped each other, and now they're buddies.
BFF forever.
Yeah. Well, the yeah, I'm not so sure about the forever because things can escalate quite quickly. But
Yeah, true, true.
so talking about their DDoS techniques, because there was some information that was put out there by a Swedish company Trusec, who worked together with different instances in Sweden and was able to march back up the DDoS traffic streams and find out that actually Anonymous Sudan was using a cluster of 61 paid servers that was hosted in IBM Cloud in Germany. So the person just paid for 61 servers, and then that traffic that he sent to disguise the origin of the attacks was routed through open proxies, which is not untypical. There's two ways to going about it. Either you build a botnet by infecting devices that are not yours, so basically taking over devices from other people, or you rent different hosts in different clouds and you use that as a botnet. Both ways, it's a botnet, and yeah, the ones in the cloud, of course, have much bigger capacity. If you're hacking a modem of somebody at home, you might have limited internet capacity, limited CPU resources, and memory resources. Of course, when you rent a server, sky is the limit, depending on your budget. I'm not sure where he gets the budget from. That's not clear yet. But, clearly, there must have been a good budget involved if he can rent an IBM cloud, because even I don't rent an IBM cloud for that
61 of them too.
reason. He has 61 servers. Now, Trusek also thought that the hacktivists are likely Russian or located in former Soviet Union countries with ties to Killnet. The ties to Killnet is clear. Killnet declared because of common objective. Killnet declared that Anonymous Sudan was part of that cluster. However, the journalists who who interviewed Anonymous Sudan through the phone, said that he was fluent in Arabic and must have been Muslim. His standards were Muslim, so I don't think there's a lot of Arabic speaking Muslims in Russia at this moment. Um, Now they can be former Soviet Union, yeah, maybe, but this whole story from Trusik also ties into the fact that that the person that was burning the Quran was actually hired by the Russian government and put there to start that whole incident, so that a anonymous hacker could come on the theater and perform DDoS attacks and blame it on that burning of the Quran. So they said that it was staged by the Russian government, which is, yeah, that comes close to conspiracy theories for me. That is
I mean, yes, but look how many conspiracy theorists have been right over the last year. So
yeah, that
you take it
like
with a
Trump
grain of
getting
salt.
arrested. Yeah. if
The fake news.
if if Trump wants handcuffs, I think he will get them from his ex-girlfriend.
I think that's exactly who's trying to take him to court right now.
So with that,
Attribution's a tough one.
yeah, yeah, but it's the story is not impossible. We've seen worse things happening, but still,
Yeah.
it's far-reaching. I tend to like to keep it simple and go with the evidence where the evidence points to, and what is the most obvious, and that would be that it's religious cause. And the attacks on France corroborate with the most simple of the theories, because now he's attacking France, and I don't see any Russian pro Russian activists attacking France at the moment. So he's alone in his attacks on France.
Yeah.
So yeah, talking about DDoS techniques, and we can confirm, however, the techniques. So those servers in IBM soft layer were taken down. So that meant one day that Anonymous Sudan was pretty quiet. He announced attacks and then he disappeared. All of a sudden, no more messages. But then he came back and started attacking again. So that means that he rebuilt his infrastructure. So of course, if he can rent them in IBM Cloud, he can rent them anywhere, right? So he just have to set up his servers again and then leverage his proxies, perform the attack. And we had some attacks that were impacting customers. So, well, I mean, by impacting that, we're targeting customers, but they were not impacted. Because the attacks, as I already said, are not of that nature that it's not possible to block them. They are not that sophisticated. So it was identical techniques that were still leveraged during the attacks on France. So HTTPS connection floods that he was trying to do, leveraging free and open proxies. And actually, a lot of those proxies that were used against the attacks on France were located in Russia. Um, which he might have picked up on that idea that somebody thinks that he's Russian. So play the narrative, right?
We've seen that with a few stressors that are involved in
Yeah.
this conflict, where they have specific regions that you can use their proxies from for
Yeah.
attacks.
Now the new thing for me is so the compromised MikroTik routers used as SOX proxies. We've seen that across the last 2 years, right? So MikroTik had that big incident where they had the password leaks. Those passwords were reused. They're still default passwords, old MikroTik devices. MikroTik very popular, especially in medium to small business. Typically, the businesses who are not caring enough about security to harden every device that they have in the network. So MikroTik routers are a very popular device, especially for SOX proxies. So we have seen a lot of compromised MikroTik user routers leveraged in SOX in attacks with proxies. Remember Maris? If that was a botnet to start with, I think it's more cloud servers proxying through all the different MikroTik devices. But a new one to me is a Squid forward proxy. I don't know if you know Squid. Squid already exists for a long time. If you have a Linux background, you will know Squid. You can install Squid on a Linux server. And then you can use that as a forward proxy. And a forward proxy means a caching proxy. So you connect out to the internet and you pass through that proxy. But actually, the proxy will change your internal IP and will only expose one IP, which is the proxy IP. Now, if you spread servers around the internet and you're using them to proxy through, well, you can hide your origin of the server and you're using different IP addresses of different servers across the world. You can bring them down and put them back up. And I think that that might also be used by certain anonymous VPN providers. You know, anonymous VPN providers, they can make a tunnel or they can just give you a proxy to connect through. And then you have an anonymous IP that you're using to connect out. And those quit forward proxies were running on Ubuntu servers. So that's the first one that I see that Squid is being used in that kind of attacks, which is interesting because it can also it can do caching, so it might be interesting for the servers to hit harder. Enough talking for me.
On to me now. So this is something that we've been covering for quite a few different episodes here, trolling a war. And this one was pretty notable, actually pretty hilarious in my opinion. An anti-Russian hacker or hackers targeted Russian TV and radio stations, and they basically broadcasted a nationwide nuclear alert. And this was pretty insane because the nuclear alert was urging residents to put on gas masks, take potassium iodine pills, and run for cover, which, given the current state of conflict, that could be possible type of thing. So I'm sure this definitely put a little bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt into the locals in Russia. And it was so severe that the Russian emergency minister had to respond and release a statement saying that this was not the case. Being a U.S. citizen, I can reference back to either a hack or an issue where we had our bulletin boards all over. I think it was like Hawaii, United States, West Coast, United States, saying that there's ICBMs and missile launched and things like that, and create a lot of chaos. So much that we had to go out and say that this wasn't the case as well. The reason why I want to bring this up is because there are certain things that happen in cyber war and kinetic war, such as this, that can have a massive impact on the psyche of the citizens of the country that's under attack. And so this is something that the IT Army, Killnet, and other groups definitely know very well, and something that we're seeing more and more as we're going forward. In fact, a week before this attack, Putin's live stream was disconnected, and it was basically attacked, so he wouldn't be able to talk to the people of Russia, right? So attacking that communication line is a very, very strategic type of vector or type of attack that you can do to actually impact the citizens. Let's see if I have actual control here. No.
Nice. Yeah. Now you have to try again. Yeah.
I always move around my mouse, and it's a problem. So this is another interesting story that I thought was pretty special here. I posted about it on LinkedIn a few days ago. Ukraine is actually moving to legalize the IT Army, and this is something that's kind of been brewing for the last few months, you could say. Basically, everybody's been looking at the IT Army saying it's kind of a step out of line. The Red Cross has come out and talked about, like, what is the impact to your volunteers? What is the legal impact? What is the physical impact? And it's kind of caused Ukraine to take a step back and realize that they kind of opened Pandora's box. What they've done is a great thing for, at least for them, leveraging in a cyber war, but there needs to be laws around it for protection, which kind of gets a little interesting. So the government is moving to legalize the IT Army in a way of legalizing them and reclassifying them as legal combatants, right? And the interesting thing here is that when you classify the IT Army as legal combatants, it means they cannot be, sued or arrested or taken to court or anything like that for launching these DDoS attacks. But these volunteers aren't specifically in Ukraine; they're all over the world, which definitely opens up Pandora's box once again to how you legally deal with all this. But to the other side of it, you lose your protections underneath the humanitarian law. So as soon as you become a legal combatant, you are actually a target on the battlefield. And this is where it kind of becomes a little interesting, is that if you're an IT Army member in Ukraine, you definitely can get a bomb dropped on you. But if you're an IT member of Ukraine in the United States, does that open you up to assassinations, hits, and all kinds of other possible horrible things can go along when you're associated with armed combat? And that's literally what they're starting to move towards, is saying that DDoS is a part of armed combat in this conflict, which it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. It's really going to be strange. I don't know how the ball is going to be moved forward after they're all classified as legal combatants, if Ukraine will start cutting off Westerners that are launching DDoS attacks for them and just go specifically to their people alone, or if they're going to continue moving in the pace that they are, where they're leveraging international volunteers as part of their army here.
Yeah, so something to take into account if you do attacks for the good cause. I can admire that. I don't agree with it, but I can understand it that you want to do it. But now you're putting yourself in the crosshairs, so there might be consequences to that.
It's something I've been talking about too, on and off again for the last few years, is that, there's a lot of crisis and escalation in the landscape, and it's going to get very violent here. And, a lot of people assume that they have protections hiding behind a keyboard, but as we're moving forward, there's going to be several examples of people that have been, killed for launching these attacks. So one example would be Janain Hussain, aka Trick. This was a very rich British hacker that decided it would be a great idea to go down to Syria and teach ISIS how to hack. He became their number two inside their cyber caliphate. He was the number one cyber influencer for ISIS, and because of that, the United States government dropped a bomb on him. This guy wasn't physically attacking anybody; he was stealing information from the army and leaking it. But that was enough as a legal combatant in an armed conflict for the United States government to drop a bomb on him. Another example would be Gaza hackers. This was a few years ago, I think in 2019, where a group of hackers in Gaza thought it'd be funny to take control of Israeli assets. And what the Israelis decided to do is they decided to bomb the location of where this attack came from. So they sent a nice warhead into the building where all these hackers were located and took them out. Which there are several examples of this happening, and I really fear, and I want to know if the IT Army volunteers are ready to die for launching DDoS attacks. It seems very morbid and out of place right now, but it's a very real question, because if they do end up legalizing the IT Army, this could become a serious threat model for those that are launching DDoS attacks.
Yeah, it's like going on the ground and go fight the war over there in Ukraine. Putting your life in danger.
It's like you said, you have to give credit where credit's due for the people that want to accept that risk. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of people that are involved with this that might not know the risk. So a little bit of education might help prevent some accidents from people that aren't expecting it.
How many teenagers didn't we have seen performing DDoS attacks just for fun? Now they can combine fun with purpose. But
well, yeah, that's a big shift. Just exactly what you said, with purpose, right? So like the last 10 years, these DDoS attacks were very purposeless. They're hacktivism, they're for a cause or for a message. Now you have teenagers in the United States that are loading up their botnet, launching DDoS attacks against Russia with the purpose, and they could be justified if this becomes legalized. But then the question is, like, when you start traveling, you're a legal combatant. What is your risk profile of traveling to Eastern Europe or places like that, right? So a lot to consider. And moving into the same subject is leveraging influencers. And this is a great piece by War on the Rocks. It's a great blog out there, and it basically got into how storytelling and marketing on the battlefield is shifting in social media, right? And as I said before, you had Janain Hussain, aka Trick, that became the number one influencer for ISIS, and it resulted in him dying. Today, you look at like what kind of influencers do you see in the current Russian-Ukrainian war? Well, you see Hacker Mom, you see box mining, you see all these other people out there trying to convince you to download these scripts and these tools and launch attacks to join the cause. Yeah, exactly. And it's very interesting to see how influential people have shifted and molded the threat landscape. And so basically War on the Rocks gets into suggesting that the United States Department of Defense should start considering developing their own employee advocacy program, which is kind of funny, right? It's basically saying like, hey, we want cyber influencers involved in this, and talking about specifically hiring social media savvy personnel to create digital content to support future military operations. And while some people might read this and say this is absolutely insane, to me, I'm grounded in reality here. This is a very serious thing here. And I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing that the Department of Defense is looking at it, but if you go into like TikTok and Instagram, you can clearly see that there are some young kids now that are in the armed services of the United States that are making videos, that are out there in the tanks, are shooting guns, are in the, inside the barracks and whatnot, trying to glorify the life of being in the armed services. And this is just like the slippery slope of where you're trying to convince people to join, then you're trying to convince those people to make positive content from the battlefield. And there's several examples.
And that's a hiring that's a hiring technique. Yeah, that's HR.
You can go on Twitter and look at like Saint Javelin and all these other Ukrainian warriors that are posting videos every day from the trenches, killing Russians. And, it's crazy that you can actually see that on social media platforms. And it's also crazy that it's being leveraged to support military operations at the moment, and just kind of shows, what kind of threat landscape we have ahead of us. And, this kind of builds into the splintering, of the internet, where things are going to start separating, and it's going to be our side and their side, and there's going to be no communication between.
Well, yeah. What's the difference between an influencer and propaganda?
They both work for the psychological operation division, so I'm guessing it's just a pay scale.
I think it's just a name. They're using the same content.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like what, 10 years ago, psychological operation people, I always hear people bragging about these things where they drive through different war zones with speakers trying to pretend like there are helicopters and gunfire going on. And that was great back then, but then, today you have e-girls and e-boys that are sitting there glorifying the battlefield, which is a whole different situation, especially if you're the enemy that's just after fighting, you're just sitting there in the trenches going through it like, oh, look, the Ukrainians are having a great time. They got their beer, they're partying, they got laser lights and glow sticks. We're over here freezing. It hits them, right?
Yeah.
It's a great tactic and something that we're going to see roll out more and more. And if you want to get a little bit more perspective on this, I highly suggest reading this blog by War on the Rocks. So like getting into the splinternet conversation though, as we separate, Russia moves to ban foreign messenger apps, which I think we all kind of know this is coming. You saw Facebook and everything owned by Meta blocked. Russia is quickly pushing the West out of their network, and
For
they've banned Discord.
government officials, right? Not for everyone. For government officials.
Right. So at the moment, it's on both sides of the fence, right? So
Yeah, but
trying to prohibit.
banning Telegram might be impacting for the hacktivists in Russia.
So interesting thing about this, right? Like a little side note, I thought Telegram, the guy that created it, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He actually had issues with the Russian government. He left Russia. He's down in Dubai now
Cyprus,
running it. So
Dubai, yeah.
yeah. So I was wondering why Telegram made the list of banned services because, like, naturally it's
yeah.
but things that didn't show up as Zoom and Signal were not banned. Kind of interesting. But this is the reason why I bring this up is just kind of show the comparison that the Russian government is moving to ban these foreign messenger apps on the government officials' phones.
WeChat.
And
seriously?
Yeah, and Viber.
I didn't see WeChat on that list, but that changes the perspective of the new agreements they have with China.
Yes, yeah, it's going to be interesting how it all shakes out.
They might have to edit that list at some point.
Back to the conspiracy tinfoil side, some people believe that China really is not there to help Russia, that they want Russia to fail so they'll be the great communist country. And, it's tinfoil and all, but there's always internal drama. So like, while Russia and China look great right now and you wonder where it's going to shake out when you see WeChat joining that list, I think it's actually more telling that Zoom and Signal didn't make it. I kind of wonder why.
Yeah.
Unless all the Russians are using Signal. But at the same time this is going on currently right now in the United States Congress, the CEO of TikTok is trying his best to stay in the United States as the United States is looking to ban TikTok outright. The US Congress has actually introduced a new bill that would allow the United States to ban TikTok nationwide, not just out of the government officials, which it is or is about to be, but from people like me wouldn't be able to access it. It basically empowers the Secretary of Commerce in the United States.
That would be a big loss, Daniel, that you cannot connect to TikTok anymore.
I'll be so sad I can't dance anymore. It's going to be a really sad day for me. I'll cry a little bit. But it's interesting because the bill empowers the Secretary of Commerce to ban any foreign technology or company operating in the United States that poses a threat to national security. So that's kind of like the final caveat there is if Congress and the United States government can find a way to say this is actually impacting national security, it'll go out. Judging on some of the comments that have already come out of Congress this morning, it sounds like they outright want to ban TikTok. They're not very happy. A lot of connection to the CCP and the Communist Party, data sharing. Even though the CEO says that they're not in contact with Chinese officials, I think it's a little bit hard to believe. So it's
I guess the Oracle move didn't help very much for ByteDance.
No, so from what I understand is they're calling for an outright sell of TikTok to a U.S. entity or the complete ban. So I personally don't see them selling it to us. But one of the biggest issues is
even when it got sold to the U.S., Great Britain is also banning TikTok and government officials now. Belgium has banned it. I think that other countries are also banning it. So even if it comes in U.S. hands, I don't think that we will allow it either.
It clearly has ties to the Chinese government, and worst of all, TikTok and ByteDance have already admitted that their employees were using TikTok to spy on journalists. So, there's your nail in the coffin right there. The evidence
Yeah.
is already out there. It's just more or less
Yeah.
the final push to sign that
So
bill.
some people are wondering why is all this hassle, because it's just a video program, but it's not just a video program. It's a program that has access to all your contacts. It's a program that can read your GPS location. It's a program that might activate your microphone because it has access to your microphone. It has access to your camera because that's what you need when you make videos. But when you're not making videos, that program can also access those resources anytime it wants. It just requires a clever person in China to identify a journalist or somebody working for the government who goes in a secret bunker and then activate all the features and find out where that bunker is located, who is there, who else is there, geoposition all the different phones around it. So there's lots of information going out of this.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why the United States government is really kind of pushing this is just because of the mindset of the average person in America. I've heard many people argue the fact that like, oh, well, TikTok and the Chinese government's the same thing as the United States government and Twitter. Okay, yes, you are technically correct that U.S. government and U.S. social media platforms collect data. The difference is you're in your country being spied on by your people versus other people, right? Like, where's your threat? And people will argue saying I shouldn't be spied on at
Well,
all, but at the same time,
well, yeah, but
uh,
the law is a little bit different also. If you know that in China, every company, whenever the government requests data, they are obliged to provide that data. They can
right,
request
right,
any data at any moment, and there is no resistance that can be. So that's the contract that they have to sign for. If you look at Apple, at Google, at Facebook, whenever the government was asking for data, the FBI was asking for data, they had to go through a lot of different steps, and then most of the time they didn't even get the data. Like the passwords to hack phones for criminal cases, Apple didn't give
yeah.
them.
So the point I was trying to get to is basically like the splinter net is happening, right? It's very obvious by the last few examples that we've gone through that there's going to be a divide, right? And if you're so confident in China and TikTok and you hate the United States government and Twitter, why don't you just go to China and support their government regime? And that mindset, right? Like that's what I'm saying is that's the mindset of people in America that say they would rather the Chinese government and TikTok spy on than the United States government. That this is why the United States government is moving to kick it out, is because of this ideology, this radicalism of saying, hey, no, I'd rather have this government spy on me than my own
Mm-hmm.
government. That's a very dangerous mindset, right? And so the government
Yeah,
is very afraid of this. It could be other subliminal issues here that aren't directly, oh, it's spying on the data. It's like who is doing the spying
yeah.
and why those people are supporting it, type of thing. So definitely something interesting to look in. But as I said, as we go forward, there's definitely a great divide between the West and the East, and you're seeing partnerships between like Russia and China get a little bit stronger and better as we move forward. I gotcha.
I didn't see
Quick.
that one coming. I was thinking, yeah, that's a nice bridge, Daniel. You should use that when we go to the slide about Xi and Putin. But yeah, here we are. Sorry
Already
about
on
that.
it.
Yeah, I was just
Also,
drinking.
to our guests in the chat, hey, how's it going? Not sure where you're from, but hopefully you're having a good afternoon, evening, or night.
So Xi and Putin earlier this week signed a joint statement where they agree to deepen and create a more comprehensive strategic partnership for the coordination of what they call in the new era. And I underlined the new era because the new era is clearly like post-Ukrainian invasion, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
so the new era is fairly recent, but the interesting point is that they will explore cooperation models in technology and industry fields just as, and I put them in different colors there. Artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, 5G, digital economy, low carbon economy. What are the top of mind of people nowadays in terms of security, in terms of development, in terms of business? Those are the most important pillars that are out there that are being researched on. So if Russia and China start to work on this together, they will form a different power that goes against the Western power, which is now led mostly by US. But that's again another very important milestone in what we call the deglobalization of the world. It will impact economies, and we've already seen it with the chip war as well. Chip
Yeah,
manufacturing. This is getting horrible, and for Russia, there's actually no way out for them. There is no other way than to go with this because right now they don't have access to new processor technology. So Intel, AMD, no, no access.
yeah,
They have to build their own chips, so they have to source it from China. China has already a step in front because they already have been eyeing up on Taiwan microprocessor factories,
mhm.
trying to clone and copy them as good as possible, trying to build their own technology, their own operating systems, which Russia will have to do very soon because software, Microsoft, no, they cannot use it anymore. Then you think about planes. Yeah, they have Boeing planes inside the country, but hey, they cannot service them because they don't have access to service parts for Boeing. They cannot leverage parts from other countries to put in those Boeing, so they have to keep that fleet going. But yeah, either they develop new planes which are completely Russian built, but hey, we're talking thousands of different planes that are in Russia that have to be replaced. So that technology, they all have to develop them themselves because they come in an isolated state. So if the status and the sanctions stay the same, um, and as long as a war will be on, they will stay. And depending on how the war will end, if the war will end, um,
Oh yeah.
the sanctions will stay in place, and Russia will become much like North Korea and China nowadays, and they have to be self-sufficient and build their own technology.
Well, that's like one of my biggest fears with like the whole splinter net and deglobalization, is that it's going to have a huge impact on the digital divide, right? And the digital divide is the haves and have-nots of the digital world. Those people that own computers, those that don't, those that know how to use Word and Excel, those that don't. And as we move forward with this, there's going to be those problems, like you said, where these isolated countries that don't have chips and don't have that, all of a sudden the availability of tech on the market is going to become much less to the average person. It's going to be there of course, the richer people, but the average person is going to be pushed further and further away from technology as deglobalization and the splinter net continues.
Mhm.
And also, by the
Yeah,
way, hello to India. I just want to say that. Good evening to India.
I did not see who joined this.
Yeah, we have having
Cyber
all these
Tarun.
chips installed in our
Yeah.
system. That's securing these
I
people's.
can I can bring up the chat. Hold on.
Yeah.
I have a page for that. I didn't use it for a long time, but
No, I mean that's a good point that it brings up with as far as that they bring up as far as devices they're listening to and whatnot. I think there's a lot of concern with the Google and Amazon home products that are always listening. They claim that they're not always listening, but they always know exactly when you say the prompt to get them to start
oh,
listening. So you know it's
well,
it's listening for the prompt.
I'm always surprised when I get an email from Google that says all my travel places that I've been through, and it can go back to years that I don't even remember traveling. It can go 10 years back from the first time that you had a phone on you, that you had Google on that phone. Knows everything and knows it better than you. All the different cities that you were in, the locations that you were in. That
Yeah, I think
it's
privacy is going to be the
mind
first
blowing.
casualty. Yeah,
Well, yeah,
privacy will
yeah.
be the first casualty of all this.
Nothing new there. We already know all that.
Yeah.
But add add on top of that a Cold War and
Yeah.
a divide and deglobalization, and you got yourself a bigger problem. Um, I I also
Ugh.
wonder what's going to happen with vulnerabilities because now we will have vulnerabilities in our software, but Russia doesn't have access to that software, and vice versa. They will have their software with their vulnerabilities, so we will have twice the vulnerabilities. But there will be a lot of spying to get access to that software,
I
and
was gonna
who
say, do I
knows?
get two times the payout if it's a Russian vulnerability versus a Western vulnerability?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So that might shake up the threat hunting world and the vulnerability.
Yeah, but no, great insight though about the chip issue, specifically also in India. See it all over the world. Okay, so going into some other fun stuff here that we alerted about. This was back in February. We talked about pro-Russian hacktivists are evolving, and basically, just to kind of keep it short, in February, a compromised server from Vietnam was attacking our honeypot at Radware. Basically discovered that the malware was related to a pro-Russian hacktivist group or hacktivist groups, a Crow group and Zara Cyberfront website. So the Zara Cyberfront website was this like blog where there was like leaked credentials and leaked information from hack and leak campaigns. There was information related to DDoS attacks, how many people they had taken down, and then like hidden on the website was also these binaries that you download. The website and also the binaries weren't around that long. But basically, this botnet was spreading through 11 different known vulnerabilities, so nothing new and special, and it can launch TCP, UDP, and HTTP attacks. Now, while this is all fine and dandy, this just kind of shows how quickly everything is evolving. This was just like 1 week, and then the following week, after they took down the botnet, they released their own stressor service. There we go. Sorry, having issues with control.
No,
we're doing two now. Okay. So after they took down their website and also these binaries there, they decided to launch a pro Russian DDoS service called Sinji. This was also kind of interesting because after we had published our alert about the Mirai binaries that we found, quickly the group was saying that they weren't, Zyra was saying that they weren't associated with a crew group. But then they launched the stressor service, so they specifically said on their Telegram that they're partners. So it was kind of one of those funny things where they're trying to set disinformation or sow misinformation by trying to say that they weren't related, but then their next move was literally saying that they were related. This is kind of an interesting service. There's been a lot of problems in the chat as far as like the service not being up and going down, people think it's an exit scam, the power not really being there. We can confirm that it has been up and it does work. It's not as powerful as some of the other stressors out there on the market. I think the reflection attack was like only 1 gig, right there in that range. Considering the service is about like $25-$30 a month, that's not the best DDoS service out there. I'm not saying to go buy DDoS service and launch attacks.
But they have a bypass. They have a bypass for the Chinese version of Akamai.
Yeah, and they also have the browser bot, which has been really popular lately, that ZeroBS had covered. Very, very, very new, very bleeding edge, but just didn't have the power behind it. And it's something that we're seeing a lot with the pro-Russian hacktivists, where they're really kind of thinking out of the box, trying to catch up to the IT army at the moment. And they're showing some really great innovative, moves here and techniques, but the way that they deploy it is not exactly perfect. So, one of the things I'm kind of concerned about is if they actually do figure it out, then it becomes a bigger threat than it is at the moment. While it's entertaining to watch them try and fail at the moment, you do wonder at some point if they're ever going to get it right. And, looking forward to the possibility of it.
Same story with No Name, their 5716 with their DDoS project, and also the same with Passion botnet.
The stressor service industry is something that always gets me fascinated. I mean, the FBI rated, I think it was like 30 some odd stressor services in December. So, deploying
this one will be harder to rate, I think.
yeah. It brings us back to the question, like, if this is such a great idea and they fail at deploying it, does the Russian government send in Wagner into, Killnet and all these other groups to try and help build their infrastructure, try and fund them, try and teach them newer techniques?
If they restrict the targets to non-Russian organizations and non-Russian IPs, they might have some protection there.
Yeah, it's the threat landscape is definitely evolving at a rapid rate. So, all right, so moving over to bots and botnets. Like Pascal said at the beginning, it's not that these things are special, it's more or less notable or newsworthy type of things that we want to talk about. So Emotet, I think we're all familiar with Emotet, Emotet, whatever they want to call it. But this thing goes on and off again, right? Like even malware programmers and cyber criminals need to take vacations, and those are behind this operation definitely did. They took about
regrouping. 3 months vacation. You mean after half of their organization has been picked up by the authorities, you have to regroup.
I think the joke around Emotet is that they're always at Sochi on their yachts, just kind of hanging out with all the other ransomware operators who are given the golden handcuffs, I guess.
Which rich yacht, because we took them all. All the oligarchs have all their yachts being taken by Western government. So yachts are gone. Finish.
uh, Soon to be sold at auction.
Yeah.
But so Emotet came back around after the 3-month hiatus. It came back on March 7th at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to read into that, they knew exactly when the United States was waking up and when to start sending those emails, typical distribution type. So they're sending through malicious email with attached zip. You download the zip and it's a malicious Office file with malicious macros in it. This hasn't really changed too much over the years, but it's very effective. Anything about jobs or crisis and escalation landscape. For me, if you send me something about the Olympics or F1, I'm probably going to open it. So it's all about creating lures and getting people to open it, right?
Don't say
and right
that.
now with the current,
You're exposing yourself.
you never know if it's a psyop. Maybe I want the malware. Maybe going forward, I know that everything about the Olympics and F1 is going to be malware related. But given the current times with job layoffs and everything that's going on, it's a very chaotic market. So this is opening up a lot of opportunity for these criminals to make perfect lures to get you to open up about job opportunities. And this is also something that the North Koreans are specializing in, and sending job postings to researchers and people in the community. So
yeah, that's the whole danger with that ChatGPT story as well.
Yeah.
How they can leverage ChatGPT to automate messages in different languages, because I even use ChatGPT to write a message to other people in Dutch, because I know how to write Dutch messages, but just too lazy to do it. So I just put 5 bullet points, and he wrote me a very nice message that I would take me a long time to actually write nicely.
Like
so
you said,
if they can leverage
ChatGPT
that,
can pre-texting. They can go look at past and prior events that happened to these people, referencing them. I mean,
put the bullet points in, generate a nice email, send it out, and it doesn't sound like a Chinese guy writing English, because that's typically what you get in phishing emails. Like, oh, come on, this is obvious. It's a Chinese guy or a non-English native English speaking person who wrote this. It's full of mistakes. But now those mistakes are gone. Plus, it's automated, so that means that they can cast a wider net. Because before they had to write a specific message for each company. Now
I was gonna say
they just put the API in there and boom, let's go.
They can use ChatGPT to make scripts and send it out and all kinds of other things too.
And they can even use ChatGPT to make that script that automates ChatGPT to do the phishing. Yeah,
ChatGPT as a service is coming to a threat landscape near you.
Exactly.
I thought it was really funny the other day how ChatGPT went down. Everybody in InfoSec was complaining it was down after complaining about how people use it all the time. So that was a little ironic, but
it was a slow day for blogs and tweets.
Yeah, but also like AI can call in sick. It's just down. It's like an employee that doesn't come in. So I thought that was pretty funny. So onto. We're gonna do this again, huh? There we go. We went one. Yeah, go brute forcer. So this is a relatively new botnet that's based in Golang. Golang, not Golan.
Golan. Go.
Typos happen. I'm surprised, only a few dozen slides before we found a typo. There might have been more that we didn't see, but yeah. So this was found by Unit 42, part of Palo Alto. It's a brand. I hesitate saying brand new botnet because of the next slide, but it's a newer botnet that they have discovered.
The technology that they're using there is, except for the Golang, but an IRC based botnet, PHP, MyAdmin, MySQL.
Yeah. And also on top of that, there is no attack vector, right? So that's why I say it's a new botnet, and the fact that it's just compromising servers. It's in the development stage. It's not doing crypto mining. It's not launching DDoS attacks. It's not doing proxy. It's not being
which is interesting to follow, because that's
the
next step will be the next step will be the interesting one. The report that it's there, I don't care very much, because
but also looking at the web servers it's targeting, it shows kind of like what the initiative is, right? So being PHP, MyAdmin, MySQL, FTP, Postgres. Probably
default
going to be looking.
credentials. It's
Yeah.
just easy because they use brute forcing, so they want popular credentials, and the most popular credentials are those. They
But I'm
they
saying like the
forgot to add
targets that they're
telnet
looking.
and SSH, but
Well, I don't think that they're looking for that. That's the point I was getting to, is that when personally, and from my perspective, when I look at this botnet and I see that it's targeting these four specific services, that it's probably they're looking to harvest information, maybe being a dropper for ransomware in the future. But it doesn't scream out that it's necessarily going to be launching DDoS attacks. Maybe crypto mining with the power behind it.
well, yeah, not only
Uh,
DDoS attacks but proxies. We also see more malware turning into proxies because that's
right.
also very lucrative business nowadays.
But these four are very data rich environments, so it's something to kind of pay
Hmm.
attention to and see where it goes to in the future.
Yeah.
This the Hinata botnet. This is like
Yeah.
anime Haruko. Uh,
Akami. Yeah.
yeah, so Akamai SIRT team has reviewed this Go based botnet. So this thing's actually been seen spreading for a few months now. It basically started at the beginning of 2023, and it's spreading via old vulnerabilities. So Realtek, Huawei devices, Hoop Yarn. These are things that
And
we report on.
who saw it first and who didn't think it was worth talking about?
uh, yeah, so
URL house never lies, right? Whenever you register on URL house, that means that you're the first to have seen it in your honeypots. Yeah, it's
especially when
just
it's all
another.
automated, it's being submitted within seconds of it hitting your honeypot. That's something also to say, like if you're looking for IOCs, you want to download malware, see where different things are hosted at URL hosts. Amazing, it's a service we love.
Yeah.
Specifically here, you can see that Pascal's honeypot had caught these on certain dates and submitted it to URL hosts. So this botnet basically is very simple. It's a Go-based botnet. It launches HTTP, UDP, TCP and ICMP floods. The thing that got a little weird with this report from Akamai, though, is how they decided to infect the device and start looking at traffic analysis, and they came up with this claim that this botnet can launch attacks that are 3.3 terabits and over.
Yeah, that is.
I if someone's had this botnet for the last 3 months and hasn't launched that attack, I don't know if they're doing it themselves. Also, doing all this in a perfect environment could be the
Yeah.
reason why they got such a high number. Uh,
Well, maybe if they would have run this botnet on my machine, they would have had 200 kilobit per second. But instead of their
right. So
server,
it really depends on the machines that they're hitting and the
yeah,
environment they're in.
it's
But
it's 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 a perfect environment. It's an estimate that takes in a lot of guesswork, and yeah, that even at some point they were referring to, and this only represents like 6.8% of the total Mirai bots. We are not in the Mirai era anymore. There is no such thing anymore as a large botnet consisting of hundreds of thousands of devices. Well, maybe tomorrow I will be proven wrong, and I hope I am,
I mean,
or I hope not. But
yeah, I
but
mean that's the fun thing about this industry is I
it's
look forward to being proven wrong, right?
yeah, but there is such a large fragment. There's so many competitors. There's such a large fragmentation that you will never see, especially not a Mirai botnet reaching those numbers that they reached in the past. There are a lot of players there. Yeah, there's still a lot of bad things going on. But 3.3 terabit per second, I would like to see that one, especially with this Go-based botnet using Realtek, Huawei, and Hadoop yarn servers. Those are things that we talked about in 2016 or 2017
Yeah.
or something.
I
Um,
think like the really only notable thing about this botnet is kind of obvious that we all know is that most of these bot herders and developers are moving to Go-based botnets. It seems to be the
yeah,
herder's choice at the moment.
that is indeed, yeah. Go, why Go? Because one, it is easy to go multi-platform. So if you would build it in C, you are very limited in what the ecosystem can provide you, and building a static C program with all the libraries being compatible across ARM and across Windows and Unix, x64, RISC-based processors, all the different processors, it's nearly impossible in C. You would say, yeah, do it in Python, yeah, but then you need the whole Python runtime, and how many devices at home like your router have a full Python runtime? Not many have that. So Go can be statically compiled into a single binary that includes all the libraries that are necessary, and you can just deploy it with a single copy. You can build it for all the different platforms that I mentioned. You just build one binary. You don't need to install any supporting environment. You don't need any shared libraries. You just put it on the system and it goes. That's probably where the name Go come from. Or Google. That's another possibility. Probably the latter. So
Yeah.
yeah. So and plus, it's very hard to reverse Go because it's Go has an integrated like byte runtime the same way that the Java virtual runtime has. It has like a small virtual machine where you run like execution code on top, which makes it very hard to actually reverse and understand what it's doing. Those are two things why Go is growing in importance. However, those vulnerabilities, I am not saying that those vulnerabilities do not exist anymore in the world, because they certainly do. We all know that there's many servers and devices, Realtek, Huawei, and Hadoop Yarn servers that will never be patched. However, what I said before, there's so much competition. Everybody knows these things already for 3, 4 years. It's already built in so many different botnets. Some botnets are still even lingering on, like Mozzie, still attacking us
Yeah.
while the guy is in jail for 3 years. God's sake. Those things keep going, and they go still after the same vulnerabilities. So there's too much fragmentation to build such a large bot that even would be able to do 3.3
Yeah, I was
terabits.
gonna say, like, most of those world record announcements that have been happening, they've been, around 10,000
Yeah,
and below bots. So
it's rant time. If you thought that I was already ranting before,
it's so to go over to the chat real quick. How do you start a company in cybersecurity? Well, I will tell you this: you get money from investors, but you do not put it in Silicon Valley Bank. All right, thank you.
do do something with AI. If you can put something with AI in your abstract, you're golden.
Oh man, the Silicon Valley Bank one. I should be a
Yeah,
comedian for this. So into another bot that made the news. This one was a little interesting, right? So
it
not anything negative to the
it's
journalists
not
or
in
anything, but like
Golang.
yeah, it's not in Golang. That's great. But this article got me off guard, right? And this is kind of like an issue in the industry where, here's a news piece that comes out that says new shell bot, new shell bot DDoS, a malware variant targeting poor managed Linux servers. And this lets you believe that this is a brand new botnet. But when you get into it, this bot is actually from 2012. It's over a decade old. And the researchers, even in their paper that they published, said this was an old botnet. So a little confusing when you start seeing news coming around saying, hey, there's a brand new Perl botnet. It's like, no, that thing's like from a decade ago.
Well,
But,
it says in the banner. Come on, one of the images says DOS Perl IRC bot version 1.0 built in 2012.
and I don't know for the life of me the threat actor that's still using this, considering you have all these things that we talked about as far as
Yeah.
Maris and Rye and all these other
Well,
IoT botnets.
and Perl, for God's sake, how many runtimes do you have installed on devices by default in Perl? I do remember Perl was very famous when I started out in the industry, like in the 96, 97. I did a lot of Perl courses and Perl teaching, but after that, everything went to Python, so nobody's doing Perl anymore. Even
So
2012 is already a stretch for Perl, I would say.
So to correct this, a very old botnet is still being used by a threat actor that probably has no
Yeah.
clue what they're doing. But just to kind of give the audience a little background, it's a Perl-based botnet. It uses IRC for its C2 communication. It can launch TCP, UDP, and HTTP attacks. Other than that,
Yeah, Bozer,
it's
you're right. IRC
most
2012 Pearl. Hey, Bozer.
Bozer had to jump in just to have a comment on that
Yeah.
one. I much appreciate that. RC 2012 Pearl, exactly. Couldn't have said it better. So, sometimes it's a slow news cycle. Sometimes
Yeah.
some
Let
things slip by, but
yeah. If it would say Golang, Telegram, better. That's the new way. Even,
yeah, exactly.
even the stressor panels are now Telegram bots. You just type in your commands in Telegram, you put
So
your everything. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. My audio was actually cutting out here, and
Uh,
I'm watching myself on the playback right now. Just move around all kind of quickly and sporadically. So moving on to the breach section of our presentations here.
yeah.
A health provider was compromised their patients, which is kind of interesting here. An online health provider named Cerebral. This is a company that came around the United States during COVID, when basically people couldn't go to the doctors and telehealth became a very big thing. They sent out a breach notification a few weeks ago to about 3 million patients, stating that their PII was compromised. So the company was using invisible pixels. It's a way to track users and where they're going. So they're using invisible pixels from Google, Meta, TikTok, and all these other services. Unfortunately, these pixels were turning over logged information and exposing medical information to third-party advertisers and all kinds of other people, which was really, really bad. This ultimately stemmed from an investigation that the company launched into their subcontractors and their tracking technology. This company has been really, really in trouble. I mean, like since its conception, they overprescribed a lot of people narcotics and drugs that they shouldn't have been given. And because of that, their CEO had to leave, and I guess they're filing a lawsuit against them. It's not a pretty situation, but then on top of this, they're reviewing and they're trying to look for other issues inside the company, and then they find this, right? But this event actually comes just days after the FTC here in the United States fined BetterHealth, another online telehealth provider, for sharing patient data with advertisers. So, we talk about this all the time on TRL that because of COVID, we're going to see a lot of breaches and incidences downrange that we weren't aware of during that time. And this is kind of an example of all these telehealth companies that popped up during COVID that ran very fast, that ended up compromising their patients or selling data that they shouldn't. And this is something that we're going to probably see through a couple different verticals as time goes on.
Yeah, to Cyber Tarun, this is how not to go with your company.
Yeah,
When you start the company.
Don't track your patients.
Collecting information, tracking. Well, it can be great business, but it's in the gray zone.
You're flirting with danger when it gets into the medical side, right? Like if I'm calling it my psychic helpline in California, I get it. Calling in a doctor for medication, that's a whole different thing to start tracking.
Yeah.
Like I said, moving fast online during a pandemic definitely can hurt yourself. Onto other data breaches. So there's a very interesting data breach that hit the U.S. Capitol. Basically, a company called DC HealthLink that administers health plans for U.S. House members was compromised, and all the personal information was stolen and put for sale up on breach form, which we'll get to later. And this threat actor was selling this data on breach form, and the most craziest thing happened: the FBI purchased the stolen data.
Before or after? The
takedown. After the leak. Before the takedown. Yes, before the takedown.
Because it's easy to say they purchased if they get their money back within 5 minutes.
Yeah. I thought this was they probably were not aware of the other operation going on to take him down. You know how United States government agencies work. We don't tell each other anything. It's all secret.
Hey, colleague, but, can you refund me my my money? I have this budget here.
Oh yeah. That would be actually really funny if they returned the Bitcoin for that. But it's an extreme move. It's something that you don't really see so often from law enforcement that intentionally creates an account on a form and goes out there with an intent to purchase the stolen data to prevent that stolen data from falling in the wrong hands. And of course, you can tell politician information would probably be used to blackmail and extort tons of people in Congress right now. So crazy that the FBI bought it, and it goes to that whole other thing that we joke about privately, the whole CFA violation, good faith research. The crime wasn't committed. They were doing good faith research. They bought data, they took it off the market. They're not leveraging it. It's fun to see that happen that way, right? And it's how other people interpret it. But to me, I interpret it like this is good faith research, and this is something that other people can do too. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not advising you to do it, but when you see the FBI doing it, might become a little bit more acceptable in the future to do it yourself.
Yeah, you have a reference to reach back to.
Yeah, please talk to your CISOs before purchasing corporate data that's for sale in the
Yeah.
darknet. Okay, I'm just gonna leave that asterisk there so YouTube doesn't get mad at me about that. And to more extreme data leaks and breaches here. This is actually kind of a sad situation here. Patients are suing their healthcare provider after a ransomware leak. So basically, cancer patients for the LVHN hospital are filing a class action lawsuit because the hospital didn't, the health network didn't pay the ransom. So they got hit by this group called Alpha VM, also known as Alpha V, also known as Black Cat. They got tons of names. They hit this organization, they locked them up, they asked for payment. This group is very much known for double extortion, so they post all the data up on a darknet leak site as a way to try and get you to pay for it. The first batch of information they posted up onto the darknet leak site contained nude images of cancer patients. So these patients are quite upset that their images of their body pre and post cancer operations is currently up on the darknet website. This is a sad situation because I don't even know what to say, because we tell people not to pay ransoms, but here in this
Yeah, in
situation,
this
this is
situation.
very sensitive medical information, right? Yeah,
Yeah, not only
it's a
that, and
very
also the impact on the people themselves.
yeah,
It was a little
it's
bit the same with Australia when there was this whole breach where they had all that medical insurance information of people who had certain diseases and who had certain personal
right,
choices.
yeah.
And
And the blood's in the water for these ransomware actors. They know that. They know that this data
that
is very
that's how
sensitive,
you
and
piss off a country, you know. That's why
yeah,
Australia decided to start to hack back and go after those guys. So something has to be done at that point. But as you
yeah,
say, the easy way out is paying, but you're still not sure that they will not leak the data. Now, they can
right.
only do
And
this once, of course. If they do it once, they will know that there will be no future payment since they consider themselves business people and they consider themselves in an economy. They probably won't do it because it will destroy their reputation and there will be no future payouts anymore if they do that once. So they can only do that
or
once.
I mean, the other side of that is that this is so severe, and that companies realize that if we don't pay the extortion, we could get sued by our patients when that data gets exposed, right? Depending on how this court case goes, but if it's successful,
What is worse
that
for
could
the
set a precedent.
reputation of the company? Yeah.
Yeah, pay $1.3 million to an extortionist, or pay $30 million to a bunch of patients that sued you. It's
Unless the security consultant comes in and says that, well, Alpha V is Russian, and then you cannot pay anymore because there's a sanction
which they
for it.
are. They are. Alpha V Black
Exactly.
Cat is,
So so it's not even a choice anymore. They could not pay
yeah.
because there's sanctions imposed. So
It's a damned if
payout
you
is
do,
not an
damned if you
option.
don't situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bad card to get dealt, and that's why I feel bad for this health
Yeah.
network, because no matter what, they're paying now. So unfortunate
Yeah, well, and the
altogether.
people's data is also out there. This is the worst.
Yeah. So this is a crazy incident here. I was talking to Pascal
Yeah.
before this event that I was actually driving through Kansas when this
Only in
happened.
America. Yeah.
Uh, I, yeah, exactly. I was wondering why there was no police on the highway. Normally when you're driving across the state, you see cops that are doing revenue enhancement, as I call it, shooting radar just to give you a ticket to make money. And there was none because a school shooting, actually multiple school shootings were called in across the state of Kansas, 11 in total on March 1st. And these were reports of an active shooter. They all happened at once, which caused police departments all over the state to have to rush and panic to get to these places to see that there wasn't an actual school shooting going on. But this wasn't the only one that happened. There's also in Minnesota another 15 swattings that happened at the same day and same time. So a total of 26 swatting attacks at the same time, same date across 2 states. Now, this is the denial of service of state resources, in my opinion. And it's really bad because, as Pascal had said, in the United States, we have tons of school shootings. This is a very real threat. Anybody calls the police department, says they're an active shooter at a school, you're usually taking this as 9 times out of 10, this is correct, and you're showing up in full force. But when you do that, you strip away the resources of departments. So like if there's actual real shooting going on in the city, when they're responding to this situation, uh, you know, unfortunate for those people involved, that's a real situation. So this is a recurring theme. We've talked about this on several TRLs now. It seems like it happens maybe once every few months that a series of swatting gets called in. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of examples out there for these swatters why they shouldn't do it. There's been a few that have been arrested over the years, but we're going to have to solve this problem in one way, shape, or form or another. It's a sad one.
Who said it wasn't Russians?
It could be the Russians. That's the thing, is that the United States and the IT Army and all these
There have
people
been
have been getting
cases where all the taxis were going to the same street in Moscow at some point.
Yeah, and people sending up fake nuclear threat alarms. It's very possible that the Russians could actually weaponize this too in the future. If they're not doing it now, they could be doing it later. So,
not that I want to bring them on ideas or do false accusations. As I
yeah,
said before, attribution is a bitch.
It's very, very difficult. So, into more extreme. So the last half of TRL is always heavy because, I believe in crisis and escalation. I also believe in not shying away from it. And I'm not trying to sow fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but I'm trying to paint a picture that things are not getting better and they're only getting worse. And this one just broke last night. This was unbelievable, in my opinion. 5 bombs were sent to journalists in Ecuador. These bombs were disguised inside USB devices, rigged to blow up once they are inserted into a computer. They are likely filled with RDX, which is an extremely potent, high powerful explosive. Yeah, and this was basically this was basically an attempt to silence journalists with a lot of conflict that's going on in the country. But we tell people all the time, don't pick up USB drives in the parking lot and plug them in. People are like, oh, you never know, it might have Bitcoin or porn on it. It's like, yeah, well, now the journalist is literally in the hospital because they almost blew their face off because they plugged it in. Please do not plug in random USB drives in your computer going forward. And it sounds crazy to say that, but literally do not plug in random USB drives in your computer, especially after this, because someone has figured out how to put explosives into a device. And genius, right? Electrical power, once you plug it in.
How can you trust buying USB devices anymore?
Oh man, it's
already when you go buy them on certain websites, they tell you it's 1 terabyte, and then it comes back and it's 25 gigs. That's it's on it.
The Chinese Communist Party starts sending explosive USB drives disguised as SanDisk
by accident. Yeah, well, if you have a mix-up in the order, you never know. Things happen.
The feds are calling me now. We just talked about a new threat model that no one knew about. It's scary, right? It's opening Pandora's box, and it's getting worse and worse. And you really have to be careful nowadays. You're not safe behind a keyboard anymore. Let's just put it that way. So, and then moving into my favorite.
You have to put a bomb screen behind your keyboard and then put your hands.
Well, I mean, the last TRL we were talking about how that the drunk Russian lady that was driving around France with an ISIM catch in the back. I'm like, hey, we should make all of our computers look like bombs, so Bomb Squad blows it up. 2 months later, you got USB bombs showing up. A little bit of an
exploding keyboards.
Yeah, unreal. So into the last little segment here, raids and arrests. This was a good one, I think, for the general community. 2 members of, I'm going to try and say this right, Doppelpaymer.
Yeah.
Doppelpaymer were arrested in Germany and Ukraine. So basically, Doppelpaymer is a very notorious ransomware group. They've got about 36 known victims on their dedicated leak site, and they've made probably over 40 million euros alone. And this was coming from Europol. But this raid happened. One raid happened in Germany, where officers raided a house of a suspect who is believed to be a major role in the group. And then the second raid happened in parallel at the same time in Ukraine, which is kind of crazy when you start thinking about there's a war going on. So they're actually out there enforcing these kind of things. So they went and raided 2 houses of one suspect. So obviously this guy ranks higher than the guy in Germany because he's got 2 houses and the other guy has 1. But he's believed to be a core member of Doppelpaymer in Ukraine. Europol is on site currently. They're running forensics on all the devices they pulled. But I don't know if this is exactly a final blow to the group, but it's definitely nice to see that law enforcement around the world is able to kind of pressure these guys and catch them.
They have been around for a long time already, those guys.
Yeah, they've been around for quite a bit. And to our current theme, Ukrainian police are very, very active, even though there's a war going on. And here's another arrest that happened in Ukraine, a 25-year-old. So this is interesting. This kid should be fighting age, right? like if anything, he should be in
Yeah.
the war, but he's not. He's in his home. He's developing a rat. He's infecting people's computers. So the Ukrainian cyber police decide to put an end to this. So he might have been drafted immediately into the army after this, but we don't know.
Yeah.
He was a developer of a rat, a remote access tool. So these are devices that are software that's dropped on the computers that can be used as loaders, drop crypto miners, DDoS, spy on people, all kinds of fun stuff. This kid was distributing this a very normal distribution network, applications for computer games, who cracked cheats and codes and all kinds of stuff that you find on YouTube. Any kid that wants to cheat will normally download these things and infect their
Yeah.
computer innocently. When they took a hold of this gentleman's device, they found that there's 10,000 other devices connected to his bot. So he's been busy during the war, apparently. I guess his only out is if they're all Russian devices. Like, I have a present for you. And then to the
I'm the new cyberwalk.
yeah, exactly. And then to the last raid. This was a good one. So Pom Pom Marine, a very aggressive child online, was arrested in the United States. Let's just put it this way. So a lot of y'all know that raid forums in 2022 was taken down. And when raid forums was taken down, this kid Connor, aka Palm, decided to have a little bit of fit, decided to beat his chest a little bit, and he decided to create a website called Breach Forum. We talked about this earlier. This is where the U.S. Capitol data was sold. It's a very popular forum. There's a lot of data being sold, a lot of botnets for sale there. And he created this forum after the FBI took this down as a kind of an FU gesture to the local enforcement. This kid was pretty much known for doing breaching and leaking campaigns and also selling stolen data on these forums. And he was taken down by the police, I think it was like 3 or 4 days ago, which is interesting because everybody assumed that he wasn't in the United States, but he actually was in the United States. And he folded like a freaking deck of cards when he got arrested. And if you read the statement of his arrest and everything, he admits to who he was and the forms he was running and everything. So you kind of have to wonder if he knew it was coming or if he was cooperating and stepped out of line. But once again, if you look at the picture, very young kid. And
Yeah, Breach Forums is offline now because so somebody else was stepping up as the administrator of Breach Forums was stepping up to take it over, but then found out that most probably it was compromised because Pom Pom gave out all his access to the FBI.
Pom Pom didn't necessarily give out all of his access, but the question is like, how much access did he give them, right? And that's a debate that's currently going on with his counterparts and everybody around the Breach Forum is wondering.
They're gonna stop it and they're gonna build a new one, basically.
Yeah, and there's also fear that it might come back online. That's why Pom's buddy is saying, hey, if it does come back online, it's going to be compromised. Please don't get into it. He's trying his best to settle fears that he didn't have access and that Connor didn't have access to certain things. But like, as I said, as I read through the documents, it seemed like this guy might have been cooperating before the arrest and that he might have crossed the line to kind of be pulled. People do these for all kinds of strange reasons, but he's definitely gone. It'll be interesting what happens in the community afterwards. But Breach Forum was very notorious for the last year. So.
Yep.
Bye, Palm.
See you in 9 years when you come back. And
yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of his friends are very nervous right now that he might be snitching or turning over things. And, I feel for those types of situations, but you need to know the people you operate with, and
you feel for it. No, yes. I'm sorry, but I don't feel for those people who are stressed now because
you're not claiming good faith research on this one, so it's problematic across the board. But with that being said, you never walk alone online.
Yeah. We've seen a couple of examples where they were behind the scenes now. FBI.
Yeah. Running honeypots and forums after they take them down. So
it's a nice image.
Yeah. So if you're a criminal, be careful out there. You never know who's watching and talking to you.
Yeah, who's listening on YouTube.
Exactly.
Besides the algorithm.
Yeah. Bozer. I knew he was a Fed the whole time.
Well, I would be happy to have 2,000 CIA operatives listening in. That would be nice.
Yeah. At least they're recording all the information. If you forget something, hey guys, what did I say 3 days ago at 1 p.m.? So, with that, I appreciate everybody. Hit the
Yeah,
like
thank you
button,
for
subscribe
joining,
button.
everybody. Thank you, Tarun. Cyber Tarun. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
got that right. Bozer,
And
nice
Bozer.
to see you again. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your comments, for your funny comments, especially. Um, and
We
for
enjoy that.
everyone who's watching on demand, stay tuned for further episodes coming, most probably next month.
Yeah. But
So
we'll have the newsletter following this, so
yeah,
stay looking
so
out for
yeah,
that.
Daniel will come out with a newsletter, so there will be plenty more information going out. So see you next time. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you. See you.
Take care.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.